You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com, the ChrisVossShow.com. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. The Chris Voss Show, the family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mother-in-law. And evidently, she didn't like the fade out, so we just skipped the fade out on the thing. You know, it occurred to me, it says in our intro that it's a brain bleed lower. I'm clearly brain bleeding already. It's a roller coaster of a show. I guess that's probably sounds better than, us having a brain bleed of a miniature golf show. So that joke sucked. I knew it was going to fall that way because I blew the setup. You see how that works, folks? You blow the setup and then the joke falls over. But maybe we'll get that edited in the future and maybe we'll put it in just to see if anybody misses the old roller coaster show for the miniature golf show or something. I don't know. People right now in the senior citizens are going clapping. Yeah, we want a slower show. This roller coaster is driving us mad. Hey, we have an amazing author on the show. As always, we have the most brilliant minds on the show because that's why you tune in. You're not tuning in to see me after 15 years. You know everything about there is to see about me and know about me. I mean, you've seen everything on my Snapchat. So there you go. But we have the most amazing authors on the show. Today we have Gareth Gwyn with us today. She's the author of her book, You Are Us, How to Build Bridges in a Polarized World. This is going to be a great discussion we're going to have on how we can maybe become less polarized or maybe more. It could be a book about how to become more polarized. We'll get a chance to ask her. It came out January 18th, 2023. She is the author of this latest book, and it has 13 stories in it, which are from the perspective of 13 people who are radically different, but also are unified by having done the work of inner reckoning with their trauma, pain, and socialized identity. Through the vulnerable illumination of each story, we learn how inner work translates into liberated leadership that serves community, workplace, and ultimately societal transformation. We're also invited into a self-inquiry process. Oh no, I got to look inside me. As an opportunity to illuminate our own unconscious patterns in the context of social identities and to catalyze our generative leadership potential in an increasingly polarized world. And if you've seen it lately, it's pretty damn polarized. She's also the founder of Let's See Labs, a think tank, a leading advocate for the radical notion that polarity is a creative engine in organizations, and she recognizes the differences in identity are highly compatible and can be a source of connection rather than conflict. We can all learn to get along, people. Who knew? Newsflash. Let's get this on the CNN. Our generative methodology that they use uses storytelling, authentic relating, and inductive growth work to create teams who have been liberated to use polarities as a strategy to unleash unrivaled creative advantages. This sounds like it worked for marriages too. Welcome to the show. How are you, Gareth?
Doing great. Good to be here. Thanks so much.
There you go. I was just getting through all the big words in your bio there. Congratulations on the book. Give us the .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, let'sseelabs.com. And that's let's see what happens. Let's see each other. Let's see. And also we do work with a lot of short films and storytelling.
Oh, really?
So let's see films and entertainment. So let's see labs as in laboratory.com.
Mm-hmm.
And on that website, you can find the book. You can also sign up for a cohort for our leadership development programs.
There you go. Should you sign up your cohorts that you might be polarized against and you're in a constant battle with? Maybe you can figure out how to working together by working with you guys.
Hey, that's a good idea. We should set up an entire polarized an experiment like that. But no, actually, what we're asking people to bring in the things that they feel polarized about, and what they're struggling with, and then we work together in community to understand how to sort of break that down.
There you go. Because it seems like you guys should have like a refer a friend button on your website, and then a refer an enemy.
I love it.
But
Yes.
This is why they pay me an extra $5.
That's good.
Every day. It's on top of the $5 I already get, so it's like double. It's I'm killing it over here. So let's go to the book. What motivated you on to write this book?
What motivated me was just this increasingly feeling this call towards wanting to understand what's at the intersection of human transformation and consciousness expansion, and then also the more absolutist, more binary social issues where there's a right and there's a wrong and there's victims and there's oppressors. And so what happens at the intersection of these two places? And so the stories that make up a large portion of this book are actually examples of people who have undergone this self-realizing process, but also what that means for social context and what that means for our world and for leadership.
There you go. So give us a deeper 30,000 overview in your words. And there's some interesting accounts here. A jihadist, a gang member, a white supremacist, and other people who've been cruel, and I guess their journey. Give us a 30,000 overview of that.
Yeah. So like you just mentioned, these examples, part of the idea is to bring in an entire different set of diverse examples. And within that diversity, we maintain distinction of how each person's story is so different, and the context that they grew up in and what happened to them and the traumas, it's all so different. And at the same time, what's being revealed throughout all of these stories as you go forward is the universal human experience. So distinction and unity are not mutually exclusive. And so part of the book allows us to really embrace that paradoxical thinking and realize we're connected to everyone and we're all going through this human experience and we're different. And so to really be able to hold both of those. And so these stories really showcase that paradox, and they also inspire that if this is possible for anyone from wherever you are at any point in time to be able to step into this kind of leadership.
There you go. Jihadists, gang members, white supremacists. Did you purposely kind of try and find people that are on the far ends of polarization, or what made you choose the individuals for the book?
Yeah, there are some individuals in the book that are less on the extremist end of things, but I definitely, to your point, did want to include examples of extremism, because in extremism, we can see even more what's possible. We find more clarity because we're saying, wow, in that context that feels so far away from me, I can see how this person did it. So maybe it's more possible for me from where I am. So I feel like that we also get gripped by those extremist views and these large, big social issues, and to really break down and say, okay, well, underneath all these issues, there's people hurting, and how can we really understand that?
There you go. I mean, some people who do act out, or people who have been criminals. So we were talking about addiction and drug abuse the other day on the show, and sometimes their childhood traumas, all sorts of different things that can happen to them, PTSD, and sometimes the acting out can be not the real problem. There's some sort of core there from their childhood they haven't cleaned up.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, one story that I really like to share. My friend Eldra, he works for an organization called Inside Circle, which is definitely worth checking out. But Eldra, when he was young, he was molested, and he didn't understand, like he didn't process that. He just buried all those memories. And as he grew up, he became involved in gang life, and he became very violent and he became very reactive. And then it wasn't until he was older as an adult, he learned to actually go back and find those memories and process his emotions and take responsibility for how he had, let that transform him into a perpetrator. And so it's really interesting to kind of say, okay, well, he took responsibility not for the behaviors that happened to him, but for how he responded to that and how he processed his own trauma, which then allowed him to show up differently in the world. And now he goes into prisons and helps other people transform their own trauma.
That's pretty awesome. I've seen that with people who have trauma, their reactiveness and their emotional, they really overreact, because I think a lot of what it comes down is they still feel like they're being victimized, like that imprint of a young age. Anytime they're being gaslit, screwed with, or they feel that they're being taken advantage of, sometimes it becomes almost like a bit of a paranoia, but they don't handle it well. and they tend to overreact. And really, a lot of it is, like you said, they haven't resolved those early years or the early trauma, or whatever it is, and they don't realize that until they get that fixed, they're just going to keep having that problem. They're going to feel like they're victimized.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Absolutely. And so there's like this victim underneath a lot of the oppressors that often gets overlooked. And so in our work, we really try to break that down and say, wait, so we all have vulnerability to becoming an oppressor. We all have vulnerability to interpreting reality as a victim. So what are the things inside of us that make us vulnerable to each expression? And to really expand our awareness around that. So when we're in the moment and we're feeling that trigger, that charge come towards us, we actually can expand the capacity to relate with that moment where we're in line with our values.
There you go. So give us your origin story. How did you come up and be raised, and what was your journey? What got you interested in this field?
Yeah. So I first started my own transformation journey, just a combination of like relentless curiosity about the relationship between the seen world and the unseen world, and what is existence. I think it's absolutely bizarre that it's so fascinating to me. So I began my journey with a combination of that type of relentless curiosity combined with my own curiosity to how to get out of my own head and get out of my own suffering loops and get out of my own neurosis, And so as I did that, I started getting involved with a lot of organizations who were doing a lot of deep consciousness work around and it all kind of related to healing. How do we heal anything around us? And maybe that's acute trauma, but also maybe it's just passive conformity. And I've adopted ways of thinking that really are out of line with my essence and more things society said. And I'm disconnected from the core of myself. And how do I really understand that? And so as I was doing that, I realized, well, the rest of the world is fighting over these issues of race, religion, gender, socioeconomic status, all these bigger divided issues. And so what if I took the idea of my own socialized identity, a white person, a woman, someone from the United States, and I broke it down and sort of applied all of these deeper transformative shadow work components to my socialized identity. And as I did that, I found an incredible amount of liberation, and it was extremely effective. And it was also very relational. It was very effective showing up in the relational space, which is what do we want to do all this work for? So we can be in community, we can be with our loved ones, in addition to leadership. And so as that was really effective for me, I said, okay, I'm going to collect stories of people who've done this. And as I did that then collection of stories evolved into the workshops and evolved into these leadership development programs that we now offer. So we can bring people in and have a combination of these short, engaging films about these stories of people who've done this, and then have people bring in their own issues and work through that as well. So it's a combination of short films and then people doing their own work. So this whole book and the workshops evolved out of my own transformative journey.
There you go. And you guys are doing films too, huh?
Yeah, we are. We've do short interview-based films that are embedded within the leadership programs. And also we've done a 24-minute short film about the reconciliation in Rwanda post-genocide.
Oh, wow.
Which is very inspiring. And to your earlier point, you were talking about choosing extreme context to reveal clarity. That's another example of that, where it's like, wow, if what happened in Rwanda, if we can imagine someone could work through that trauma, what does that mean for us? So it's very inspiring to hear from both survivors and perpetrators and how they move beyond all those atrocities as a community.
Most definitely. I mean, and you also work with businesses, because businesses have teams and not everybody gets along on those teams. Tell us about some of the business work that you do.
Yeah, it's been great to work with businesses, especially because part of our sweet spot is working with cohorts of 20 people. And so we love to have teams who are collaborating on a daily basis come in and take the workshops together. And so we had an organization where, number one, they were remote working, which is, bigger percentage today, people are remote working. And so there's a higher level of disconnect. And so things can be interpreted differently, and assumptions can get carried away. And there's just a general lack of disconnection. Yeah. And so we worked with a team, a remote team, to go through this whole program. And it allowed them to really, really deepen their connection and to bring in things that were unsaid. and to move toward tension instead of away from it, and understand how that tension is actually can be productive for creative output for the team. So it enhances the creativity as well between people working, which is really fantastic.
There you go. I love how on the cover you have, technically it says you are either with us or against us, and then it's been erased or wiped out the either with us or against us. And so it says you are us.
Yes.
And so imagine, we live in a polarized world, especially with politics and topics that are going on in our social environment. Some people want this, some people don't want this. And I was listening to Sam Harris' podcast today, and he had somebody on recently who was talking about this and how we need more people to try and build bridges. We need more people being in the middle. I've been both a Republican and I've been a liberal, and now I find myself as a moderate Democrat. And a lot of the conversations that I see the fallacies of both parties, and I see what both parties are trying to do. The application of it sometimes isn't the best application of it, and sometimes it's a little privileged on certain sides or each side. But I can see what they're trying to achieve, and I can see, okay, well, if we make this concession, maybe you can make that concession, and we can meet in the middle somewhere. We can all get along. We're having that right now in our politics, where there's a big fight right now about possibly the government shutdown and funding the military, and that whole bit. It's 10 years from now, people will be watching this video going, yeah, it's still happening. It seems like it's always happening since 95. And so we need more people who can build bridges and worlds. One of the things I have a discussion, if I decide I want to talk politics with somebody, they want to talk with me, I say, okay, great, but we're going to lay a foundation first. We're both Americans. Okay. This is the Constitution. It's all about the Constitution, and we're Americans. And all this other bullshit is just stacked up on top of that. So keep that in mind as we go down this road, that it's not us, you versus us in each other. We're both Americans. So let's have that conversation as Americans. And it does seem to help.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It reminds me of one of the stories we work with is also my friend named Shadi from Palestine. And he said that he was at an intersection in the middle of Israel-Palestine, and there was a threat coming from some Israelis. And he was tempted to fight back and to actually, allow his anger to join the fight. And he said, but wait, what I remembered right in that moment when I was tempted to fight was my identity of being human. So similar to what you're saying, finding something universal to all of a sudden step into, and then we can go anywhere from there. Then we can explore our differences, but we've also established that we're not all different. We do also have something in common. And so being able to put that on the forefront, I do think is helpful.
There you go. And I'll correct people too. I'll be, when it starts getting a little too weird, people are like, oh, you liberals, this, blah, blah, blah. Hey, whoa, back it up. Hey, we're all Americans. Okay. You just have some different ideas about how the way you want this country run. The other side has some different ideas about this, how this side wants to be run. About 30% of this country is complete batshit. So, and so we have to find a middle ground. So where do we find the middle? Because they want to throw around, there's a lot of this memeing that goes on. They want to throw that around. On teams, is it harder to get people to get along on teams and get people working together without, issues? Because, people are always like, Bob shut down my program and didn't green light whatever. And now I'm whatever. And, I don't know.
Yes, it is hard. And I think that one thing that is easily weaponized is the political aspect of it. So if somebody says no to something, instead of it just being a simplicity of a no, all of a sudden the narrative that can be put on top of that no is like, oh, because it's some political reason. And so I think that's where it gets really sticky and tricky, is when the political narratives get weaponized within the workplace. And those political narratives are, clustered within all the different issues, because that's where the political polarization is like, okay, well, this bundle of issues is on one side, this bundle of issues is on another side. And so oftentimes we find that we need to break down the content and bring people back in to understand how they're relating with each other and how the process is going of their actual collaboration, and then revisit the content again later once people learn to regulate their nervous systems.
The I've been accused of that. I've been accused of political things being a CEO. I think somebody accused me once. They're like, "You're not doing my idea because you don't like it, or because it's not yours." I think that was the pitch they threw at me one time, and I was like, "No, I'm." You don't understand. We've already did your idea and tried it and it failed, or maybe it was no, it's just because the idea sucks. If you're and here's why, but they took it as like some sort of thing that somehow I run a high school system of management that's like, oh my God, I don't like your idea because it's not mine. I'm like, some sort of mean girls approach. And it's really important. How does this translate though into leadership? Because as you talk about in your book, a lot of these things give rise to a clear leadership methodology. How does that work itself into leadership?
One thing that we bring to the forefront is helping people understand the value of their own reactivity, their own judgments, and their own temptations to blame other people. And how when we notice ourselves judging other people, it's actually the exact guidepost we need to then go source where we might be hypocritical, disowning our own boundary, or not owning our own sense of self-worth. Because someone could say something mean to me and I could get mad and react, or I could know my worth beyond it and I could say, oh, no, thank you. I feel hurt by that and it's no big deal. But I'm on. And maybe I don't hang out with them, but I have choice. I have agency. I have boundary. But instead of thinking that what they said is the basis of my worth. And so we help people understand, I want to blame someone because they said something mean about me. And there's like a facade that as long as they change, I'll feel better. But we pull that back and say, wait, how do we feel okay inside first? And then show it later.
There you go. I can see how this could really be important in marriages and relationships, because I hear a lot of relationship references, and people who feel, offended by things, or, whatever's in the moment, or, it's a value essence or issue. And sometimes, people just take things. And I think, as you mentioned in your reply, there is some things people have unresolved issues that they haven't resolved, and they've dragged into the new relationship. And now they're replaying that thing once again and blaming the other person for it.
Yes, they are. And, one thing that we also try to really highlight is that we're not saying to not be affected by the world. When people say things, we can acknowledge that we feel impacted by what they said or what they did. It's just, what do we then do with that? Do we let it evolve into a narrative of demonization? Or do we process why we feel the way we do and then show up at a blank slate with infinite possibility? And so building that capacity is really hard because, like you said earlier, it asks us to look at our self-inquiry. It asks us to look at what is it about us that makes us vulnerable to being reactive?
There you go. I learned that with stoicism. When people say, ignorant stuff or stupid stuff, or, they're trying to maybe set you off, in learning to sidestep them and all that stuff, and understanding that, I think that's probably what a lot is going on with, the social media battles that we see, where people go online and on Twitter and they're, going back and forth for whatever the thing is, which is better, tacos or burgers. We all know it's tacos, everything like that. I'm gonna get hate mail.
I happen to agree with you.
we're gonna have to send the book out to everyone. Sends me hate mail over that one. They're like, no, damn it, it's burgers. So there you go. If you really want to fight, have a fight over which is better, In-N-Out Burger or Whataburger in Texas. Boy, that's a whole level of that Congress can't even solve themselves, or nuclear war. So what are some tools that we need to have, or what sort of recognitions that we have? Do we have to recognize that we're all human? Do we have to recognize that there's benefits to getting along?
Well, I think one thing that's important to recognize is that our emotions are our guideposts. So when we feel angry, there's something really valuable there. And so to not push away, suppress, or deny our emotions, to actually start to honor what they might be saying to us, not in a way that means to have them control us, but in a way that means let's what is my anger actually wanting to say? And is there a deep purpose behind it? And how can I connect with that purpose, and where that purpose allows me to care about someone? And when you show up in care, things do change and transform differently than they do when you show up with an absolutist mentality or a right-wrong mentality, expecting other people to change. Care is very inspiring, but how we access our care, our emotions can show us that, but we have to actually process them and feel them and be with them. So I think that is one of the really important thing we want people to recognize, and also to recognize that the way that we think, humanity often thinks in stories, and we're making stories up about the world and other people all the time. And so we encourage people and invite them into, taking a really critical look at what narratives they've created about the world and about themselves, and to really break those down. You can choose to adopt them again, but we want to expand that. And I think the word generative is really key here, where we say, okay, these narratives create division. These narratives create generative dynamics when we're in relationship. And so we want to shift into those generative narratives.
There you go. Well, maybe we need to do that. We just need to abandon our sides and try and meet in the middle. We should give up tacos and hamburgers and move to salad.
Well, there's a case to be made for that through care, if you're caring about your body.
I probably just started a whole new war. The vegans are going to show up now. So there you go. I think this is interesting. And you mentioned something about how recognizing that the aspects of things that connect us and trying to meet in the middle. Do we have to not focus on our extremes and focus on, hey, can we try and meet in the middle? Do we have to try and be maybe better negotiators and realize that we have to give up some things maybe to get along and meet in the middle? Or
usually when people go into a self-inquiry process to really understand what narratives they've been living in or what trauma has been influencing their behavior, it often does actually correlate with having to sort of give up something. And that doesn't mean give up an idea, but to give up a part of an ego, to give up an entitlement, or to give up an aspect of that, of what is being presented as resistance or defensiveness. And so there often does correlate with that. It doesn't ask people to necessarily give up their beliefs. Oftentimes, the way that they then relate with those beliefs becomes really effective. Sometimes it changes, sometimes it doesn't. But what it really is asking is like, what will happen if we do this? We don't know. We really don't know. So once we start to ask these questions, staying in the unknown and staying in infinite possibility, which is actually hard to do a lot of times, like to be in the mystery, the mystery of life and existence and of who we are as a humans, and to really expand the capacity for the unknown and then see what happens from there.
There you go. Too many times we view each other hostilely. You're not like me, so you must be the enemy. And you need to be more like me or do what I like to do. Religion might stick out in one's mind. You have to do my thing or you're the enemy. This completely what you're talking about on the cover of the book and the inside, us and them. And so I guess you mentioned something really interesting, giving up ego, giving up entitlement. Is that a lot of people's problems? Is their ego is really connected to that identity of the position they believe that they're in?
Yes. And that does relate back to, it's not our identity can make us unique and it's important, but how we relate with our own identity is what really matters the most. And so, yes, I think that when we feel the need to defend our identity, there is some sort of ego at play. Now, when we healthfully lay a boundary or we say no to something, that's different. Because we can, step into safety. We can get ourselves out of a situation if we need to. There really are real threats that we need to step away from. And at the same time, this sort of clinging to this self-righteousness where we feel like our identity is the right identity and we had to defend it at all costs. That's where I think we start to get a red flag and say, hey, wait, what aspect is entangled with the ego here?
There you go. I sit down now and I try and look at each side and go, okay, what are we trying to achieve? Or what do we think we're trying to achieve here? What's really the goal? You can look a lot of activities on the Republican side, on the right side, and you can understand that, hey, they really are into family. They like kids. They're very much into family. They kind of believe in this sort of nuclearish family type, archetype, whatever it is. And that's really important to them. Now, some of the ways they're trying to maybe apply that might be the challenges, but, trying to find balance and look at each side and go, hey, what are you trying to achieve and how can we do it? And more, we need to get back to that. We need to identify less. And that's why the importance of your ideas and your books are, because, we can't go on this polarized.
Yeah. And to your point about the question about giving something up or not, in addition to aspects of the ego, I think one thing that's interesting is once we take responsibility for how we show up, we begin to have the capacity to actually listen and intake new information.
Yeah.
And when we have new information, we can expand on the ideas and how those ideas are applied in society to more contexts.
There you go.
So by remaining defensive, we're limiting our own evolution and our own capacity to apply our own ideas at a broader scale.
There you go. Do we have to identify that we're trying to force our ideas on other people when we should really just let it go and learn to try and find the parts we can get along? For example, I'm an atheist, and I'm not trying to push atheism on anybody. I don't really care if you believe it or not. I kind of have the opinion that, it's a weird life. No one knows what happens after. Whatever log you got to hold on to get over the rapids, hold on to it. Have fun with it. Just don't try and push on me, push my stuff on you. But, I got people knocking on the door on Saturday morning going, hey, you want to join up the blah, blah, blah. And I got people trying to make laws and rules that, try and make me forced into a certain secular religion. You're just like, hey, man, what the hell? And so do we have to realize that, hey, man, maybe we should be less pushy, use the word entitled earlier, and maybe we should just be more, I can't think of the right word right now.
Yeah. I think that what's interesting is to get where maybe empathy would come in is
there
once
you go.
we understand the parts of ourself that feel that are vulnerable to spreading our own idea onto other people or onto the world, our own sort of inner activist in a way, then we have capacity to empathize that somebody is coming from a place where they're genuinely in an entire paradigm where they believe that if everybody adopted the world the way that they see it, then the world would be better, and that there's an innocence in that level of belief, and that's worked for them, and that's how their direct experience and the context from which they came has created this paradigm of reality for them. And so we can actually empathize with that if we're not defending ourselves or feeling threatened by what they're saying. And then from there, like I was saying, then that the portal opens where we actually, if someone is bringing something dogmatic, we try to defend it or we feel threatened. We're just kind of in the same pattern, right? But if we're not threatened by it, all of a sudden we can have a conversation and we can understand, oh, this is really interesting. You seem very, you feel strongly about this. I'm curious, where did you learn these ideas? And so we come with curiosity instead of coming with this idea that, we feel oppressed by someone putting their ideas on us. And we take responsibility for not buying into victimization or feeling like others are oppressing us.
There you go. And you're more inquisitive and open-minded as opposed to defensive and closed off and ready to do battle. The word you used there, empathy, I think is really important. And that's something we've really fallen away from. I think COVID made it worse because it isolated us even worse. And now you can sit at home and, things that happen in the world don't seem to touch you. And so you can not really care. You can have, if some baby dies in Africa because they don't get fed, you're just like, I don't know, but let's fight over, I don't know, some other thing that maybe doesn't have a human element to it of life and death and less values. Like, I don't know, pick a topic, but having the empathy, I think that's what we need to get back to more and more. Having empathy for each other, caring about each other as human beings. I'm still just amazed at how in this country we can just put up with daily school shootings. We just kind of go, no, whatever.
Yeah.
There seems to be a real disconnect. I think social media has caused a lot of that, and our devices, because we see everything from a two-dimensional thing, and in our brains it really doesn't connect us emotionally to things. And there's a bit of a science there, actually. So,
yeah, I agree with you, and I think that something interesting about that as well is it gets kind of meta. How do we get empathy for the disconnection, for the lack of empathy? And in some ways I can see how the times that I've allowed myself to really experience the heartbreak of the world, the sheer magnitude of suffering that is happening on this planet, and what I've had to learn to be able to feel and have my heart break open, not closed, the process of learning to feel everything, that helped me realize why the majority of people would shut that off, right? Would close themselves to feeling, because we have so many competing demands in a really high intensity competitive environment. And if you stop to feel everything, it's extremely hard. And feeling is our pathway to empathy. So I wonder how we can continue to embed feedback loops in our culture that invite us into feeling grief and into feeling our heartbreak, and that realize that actually that's something we can do. We all have the capacity to do that. And so finding ways to turn towards that versus disconnection. And like you said, technology is one of those things that makes an easy distraction, but it's another piece of responsibility that we can take in order to be a better leader in this world, is to take the responsibility to feel.
There you go. Perfectly said. Well said. That wonderful thoughts there, because we do need to take responsibility for ourselves. So final thoughts on the book and your work as we go out.
Yeah, I just want to encourage anyone that's interested to get involved to come to letsseelabs.com, sign up for a cohort. We're doing individual people from all walks of life joining cohorts of 20 people right now for our leadership development programs. So anyone that's interested to dig into this kind of how to build bridges in a polarized world and wants to take responsibility to do that, join our program. And also you can find the book, You Are Us, How to Build Bridges in a Polarized World, on that same website, letsseelabs.com. And yeah, thanks. It's really been a great conversation. I appreciate being here.
There you go. It certainly has, Gareth. And hopefully you've helped people see the light. We need more people in the middle. And it seems like the people in the middle don't think keeping this thing going anymore. We're just like, hey, can't we all get along? There you go. Thanks very much for coming to the show. We really appreciate it.
Yep, likewise.
There you go. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to anywhere that you can find good books that are sold. You Are Us, How to Build Bridges in a Polarized World, out January 18th, 2023. And check out her website as well. Thank you for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out. Brilliant.